Welcome, beautiful people, to Petrify the Patriarchy. I'm your guide, Joe B. If you're ready to unearth the subtle ways patriarchal culture has shaped your world and uncover the hidden power within your own shadow, you're in the right place. Here we don't just speak truth to power, we wield it, turning stagnant energies to stone so that your authentic, liberated self can truly flourish. Let the unlearning begin. Welcome back. You are at Petrify the Patriarchy. I am Joe B., your host. I'm also an unlearning coach and consultant, writer, speaker, author, and educator at heart. And obviously now here doing podcasting. I'm here today for another empowering episode of, again, Petrify the Patriarchy. Today, we're going to take a different turn. I have got so much to say, and I dove headfirst into, let's get some lessons out there, because, again, that's who I am as an educator. I really, before I go any further, need to set some groundwork, kind of a prologue, if you will, that gives you more of the why I'm here doing what I'm doing. All right. I've had a series of events happen in recent years that have been really hard for me to talk about, and also are the impetus for everything that I'm attempting to put together now. And so I know this is going to feel disjointed from the things that I've already put out, which isn't a lot at this point. I'm hoping to continue on, and I've got a goal for myself to maintain a weekly episode for the foreseeable future. But I need to get to the why. I need to get to why I walked away from my career. I need to get to the why I am now doing this work versus the stability of a classroom teacher. And I'm hoping that y'all follow along with me, and also it'll resonate with you as well, so that we can continue the conversations. So yes, today we're taking a different turn, and I'm going to call this kind of the prologue, and I'm going to break this up into several different pieces. It's a long story with many different nuances that just all together create a really enormous painting, if you will, and it will become clear as to why I stepped away from what I had done for so long. And I want to remind us that our last episode, we talked about the imbalance of forces between masculine and feminine energies, and definitely the imbalance that we're seeing, certainly in the U.S. politically right now, with an imbalance of patriarchal belief systems. And so my story is going to play into and show you real world implications of what that imbalance actually does to people. And I'm about to get personal. Again, not something that I've shared outwardly much. I mean, my close friends and family know what I've been through. But the rest of the world hasn't heard my story, and I believe that it's impactful. And it's impactful for women, it's impactful for men, it's impactful for our greater society to understand the harms that it causes and how we need to unlearn in a global capacity to know better, do better, be better, right? So, we've talked about what patriarchy is, this huge imbalance of masculine and feminine energies, and how does it actually play out in real life, right? So, what does it feel like when that patriarchal grip just grabs you and claws into you and doesn't let go? How does that feel, right? What are the implications when that happens to you or someone you love? So today I'm going to invite you in to the prologue. The story will come out in bits and pieces. I'm also going to put out more content, kind of intermingling But today we start kind of the prologue. Some of my core belief systems are going to be important to know while we move through the remainder of the story, and then also talk about some of these aspects that I've been researching so heavily and have come to fully embrace these last years. So this is my journey, and it's identity crisis mixed with my whole personal unraveling. It is me needing to literally rewrite my entire personal story because of what has happened to me over these last handful of years. And as much as I'd love to say that it started with some sort of beautiful philosophical revelation, that is the furthest thing from the truth. It started with super visceral, gut-wrenching, just identity shattering, because of the systems that we participate in. And it left me, I guess shattered is probably the best word. Trigger warning, I am going to be discussing suicide, thoughts of suicide over the next, as I continue on through the story. I'm going to also bring up a little bit of sexual assault and domestic violence. And I think ultimately the goal is to share that transformation with you all because it is profound. And women aren't alone in dealing with patriarchal systems and the harm that it causes. And having more stories out there, the better. Experiences matter, stories matter. And I'm a firm believer that stories alter our DNA. I mean, I know they don't, but they alter when we get to feel someone's story, their experiences, we get to take that in, and it changes us. It makes us want to be better and do better. And as an educator who has spent many years having to do deep dives into data, and data is important, facts are important, I'm going to add an however here that facts and data have definitely taken a turn into more of a belief system than reality. And so this is where stories become really important. When we share our stories and somebody is at the other side of a table or the other side of a screen and they get to feel your energetic components, when they get to see the expressions that cross your face, when they see the tears well up, when the voice quivers, right? That's the stuff that changes us. And so I'm here to share some of that story with you all because I am ultimately very transformed because of stuff I've had to go through. So while I usually call these last handful of years the universe punching me in the face, because I don't know about you, I don't listen deeply. And so I have to have some really big shit happen for me to go, wait, maybe this is a wake up. Maybe I'm supposed to be paying attention to something here, right? And so the universe was duking it out with me, and it was one after the other, after the other, after the other, and I did not get a reprieve. I did not get a reprieve. And that's when I had to step away and really start to think things through, right? So I guess the other thing that I didn't necessarily anticipate was that deep agony that I felt. And it was a long time coming, but when I finally took the time to step back and sit in it, to marinate, if you will, it was so incredibly painful. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was supposed to do with my life. And probably for the better part of 2 years, the thought of suicide felt better than living through what I was living through. that I must not be valuable or worthy, that I must not have something good for the world, that I must be better off dead. And those thoughts were more active than anything else, again, for probably the better part of 2 years. And trust me, I've taken a lot of time. I've seen all of the right people. I've got a great team around me. I've got amazing friends who were super supportive. And those pieces have definitely fallen into place in a very real way that have encouraged me and supported me and made me feel like I should just take this leap. I just need to be here doing this thing with you on YouTube, on podcast, blah, 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 right? So here we are. So I needed the wake-up call. And finding Medusa's story was really an important piece for me, because I feel like a huge piece of me had been silenced through systems, through just everyday living, because it's the air we breathe. And I'm going to talk about this word unfounded, which will come up over the next in the next episode where I discuss more of my story. But basically being dismissed, not believed. Your experiences don't matter. You don't matter, ultimately, right? And that resonated with me and Medusa's tale, because it's like silence itself, the isolation and the stigma that comes from it. I was a shell of a person. I didn't know who I was anymore. And so my hope in sharing details of my story, it's not to dwell on the past. Absolutely not. It's certainly not to trauma dump. It's for a better understanding as to how our systems harm, number one, how we can find community and empower and grow with each other, number two, and number three, how do we illuminate so that these super painful, very real ways that patriarchal culture harms us, infiltrates our institutions, our workspaces, affects our very well-being, dives into our soul. It's to bring light to that so that we can fight for something better. And it really comes down to the why this work of petrifying the patriarchy isn't simply an intellectual exercise for me. And while my background in women's studies and sociology, anthropology, and education are very much my default is academia. Academia itself is also a patriarchal structure to prevent emotion and feeling and being and intuition, right? And so this is really a culmination of coming back to myself through probably one of the most challenging times in my life. And it's hard. It's hard. I'm glad I've gotten to this point. But there was a time I didn't see any kind of future for myself. And so this is my mission. It's my lifelong mission, is to make sure that no one else has to live through something like I lived through. And that there are always places, always people, always women who've experienced these things and know how to support each other and empower each other into better spaces. So we're going to be unlearning together and hopefully growing a sense of community here as well, because we need more women out there sharing that space together instead of fighting against it, right? All right, so I'm, again, prefacing a lot today with some of my belief systems and some little tidbits as to how this story goes so that you better understand my core belief systems and some nuances that I think are really, really just really important to define before I dive into the meat of it. So this, again, I'm calling it a bit of a prologue, right? So I've been a public school educator for nearly 20 years. In grand total, I want to say it was 17, 18 years, something along those lines. And I started as a paraeducator, a teacher assistant. I was a substitute teacher for, I don't even remember how many years before I finally landed in my own classroom space where I think that was 14, 15 years in my own space. So long time, right? And I loved my teaching career. I fought really, really hard to get there. And in hindsight, now that I'm really diving back into my own personal history, in hindsight, the universe was telling me then, don't do it. This is not where you're supposed to be. But I needed stability, having just come out of a divorce. I had a young child that I needed to support. I needed financial stability. I needed health insurance. I needed, all of those things that a job like educator offers. I needed those things. And so I fought and I fought and I fought to get there. And it took me many tries, not because I wasn't doing my part, but because the system itself was not designed for someone like me who's highly creative and doesn't want to do things according to a script. I will never be a script reading teacher, ever. I'm never going to be a script reading person, ever. It's also probably why I never got into acting. I can't embody anybody else but me, if that makes sense. All right. So I loved my job. And once I got there, I was really fucking good at it. And it was home away from home, and I made sure that my classroom space was exactly that, not only for myself, but for the scholars who came through my room. I wanted them to truly love being there. And it was hard to love all of them all of the time, but I did a pretty damn good job of it, right? So, that being said, I'm not immune from patriarchal structures in my own little bubble that I'm creating by myself, right? I'm not immune to that. And what I loved, which was teaching and being an excellent educator and watching my second graders, because I taught second grade most of my career, watching them grow was the most beautiful part of my job. Watching them flourish and love learning in whatever capacity they needed to learn, right? I wasn't going to hold them back. Like, you do you in this space, and we're also going to have a beautiful community while we're here, supporting each other and growing in the way that we need to. And I allowed for that, which is kind of unheard of in some ways. So yeah, it was a really stark example of the love and compassion and kindness and empathy that I created in my space. But the system of education itself was not going to show me that eventually. And that stark example is, that's probably one of the hardest things for me still to this day to really just sit with, right? So some basic facts that I also need to speak to is that public education is largely a woman-dominated field. And aside from the fact that we probably already know that, number one, and our pay reflects that because patriarchy does not like to value humanity, and teaching is very much about humanity first before academia and education. So yeah, about 80% of educators are women, and in general, women don't go out and harass other women. We don't sexually harass them. It happens, but in my experience, nearly 20 years of doing education work, I might have had conflict with other women, but I was never sexually harassed by another woman. I was never harassed by another woman. And if there was a conflict, we just kind of dealt with it, right? Like, I can go to work, I can be professional, I can have a conversation with you, and we can, put our differences aside for the sake of the job that we need to do and the kids that we need to take care of today, right? But sexual harassment in my 20 years was not a thing that I experienced with women, all right? And this is also important to note because in my district, the policy itself, the sexual harassment policy itself, was 20 years old. It hadn't been updated in 20 years. And when you have an experience where someone harasses you, sexually harasses you, and your policy is that outdated, you have to follow old policy. You can't just suddenly start new policy, which I think is total bullshit. I think everybody out there who works for an organization, whether it's an institution like education or a corporate environment, I think everybody should be proactive when it comes to things that actually cause harm to people, whether it's disability discrimination, racial discrimination, sexism, sexual harassment. Those kinds of things should always be at the forefront and should always be adapted, because the way that we choose to live in society usually moves faster than the speed of law. And law, I'm not a lawyer, but law usually is about the lowest common denominator of who had money to pay for what in order for our laws to be this way. And that doesn't necessarily match our general humanity out there in the world, right? So I just want to put that out there, that the policy that I was now arguing against was 20 years old. As long as I had been in that district, that policy had been in effect. So that tells you how often they've had to deal with sexual harassment in my district, and it's not a living, breathing document or policy that continues to grow as humanity and community changes. All right. So that was a huge fuck you moment aimed at me in my situation. I also want to talk about the person who harassed me, right? A man. Now, I've worked with men I was an elementary school teacher for my career. Men are not people that you genuinely come across in an elementary education. There's not a lot of them, right? And I have not found myself in a position where there's been adorable single men to flirt with at work, number one. They're usually much older and usually very married, right? And because I was primary, kindergarten, first, second grade was my grade band, almost always 100% women. Not, again, I'm speaking in generalities right now, but in my 20 years of experience, I never worked with a man in the K2 band. And then the men who generally were teaching were third grade and above. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade, depending on the year in my district. That's where generally you're going to find your male teachers, and it might be one or two. Again, not a lot. Your administrators, most of my administrators, your principals, most of my administrators were men. So there is a hierarchical belief system within education, but then you're also not really working with a ton of men in elementary school, right? So while I had worked with them in bits and pieces along the way, even when I did work with them, there was nothing about them that screamed harassing or sexual in any kind of nature, right? So when it happens, it's pretty fucking obvious. I also want to take a second to talk about I don't shit where I eat. I have never gone to work, ever gone to my job as a teacher and thought, oh, I'm going to meet my future husband today. Or, oh, maybe I'll get lucky and there'll be a cute man this year. Or never. It never crossed my mind. I never went to work thinking I was going to find a boyfriend there. That is not a thing. I'm sure it happens, but in my experience, it's not been a thing in any of the public education spaces I have been in. All right. So I just want to put that out there because life is complicated enough as it is. I have been purposefully single for 20 years. At this point, I have not found somebody that I want to disturb my peace in that way. To say, yeah, let's go ahead and move in together or get married again. It's not been a priority for me, and it's still not a priority for me. I don't want to go there because men are hard to live with. I'm not here to be a mom. I'm here to be a partner. And I think that can be a separate conversation at some point, right? We can talk about how our society has done a disservice and how we raise men in that capacity. So not interested, right? And I knew going to work, I was not going to find my partner. I also, again, don't want to shit where I eat. I don't need to complicate my life any more than it already is. My job is really hard. Teaching is hard. If you know a teacher, hug them 40,000 times a day because their job is hard and they need the moral support. So please do that. If you are a teacher listening, you know how hard this is. And if you've never ever wanted to be a teacher, just go volunteer for a week and then go, okay, yeah, no, it's hard. Like, I think everybody should have that experience. Every graduating senior should have volunteer time in an educational experience, because once you leave education, we have some belief systems. I'll just leave it at that. We have some belief systems about education and teachers in general that are bullshit. Okay. So I also want to speak to when somebody is showing interest, right? And I'm speaking from a heterosexual perspective, right? When someone is showing interest, it's usually pretty obvious that someone is showing interest. And interest for women is vastly different than interest for men. And let me just explain that to you. I have been a heterosexual woman my whole life. And from the time I was a teenager, 14, 15 years old, right? There are just some general understandings about what boys or men who are interested in women, what they do. And when a woman who is conditioned through our sociological systems, our patriarchal systems, a woman is taught to be friendly, approachable, kind, nice, non-argumentative. We're supposed to smile, right? And our society teaches us that that's how we're supposed to be, even when someone we may not know, or maybe there's a level of discomfort, men, around, we're still supposed to act that way. And we're taught to have conversations in the grocery store line, for example. We're taught to be curious and ask questions. We're taught to interact with people in a friendly way, right? Like that's like the nice thing to do. But women are able to compartmentalize this as a one-off conversation in the hallway or at the grocery store. We're able to be curious about someone or ask questions or engage with someone without it being more than that. We are able to be professional and friendly and civil and amicable without it being more than that. We're able to, even if we feel interested in someone, maybe outside of professional and friendly, we're still capable of putting on an air of, I'm professional and friendly right now because A, I don't want to overreach, and B, I'm at work, for example. And men take all of that as interest, sexual interest, or maybe even pre-sexual interest. Like, you're cute enough or you're friendly enough that I want to ask you for coffee to determine if there will be more of that, right? That is a huge discrepancy between men and women in our United Statesian society, right? Women can be friendly, polite, professional, civil, amicable, and have absolutely no intention beyond that. And men are going to automatically jump off a cliff and go, she wants me. We have got to do a better job of teaching men in our society that they too can be curious and professional and friendly and civil and amicable without it being an automatic, I want to jump your bones bullshit. In my experience, with any single man, there are always those metaphysical moments where you know that suddenly this has gone from a friendly conversation in a line at the store to, I know what he's after. And now I'm super uncomfortable that I even engaged in a civil conversation. It happens all the time. And we don't talk about it enough. We don't talk about how we can counteract that. We don't talk about how we can raise our boys to be better men than to automatically assume. Okay? So I just want to make sure that that's really clear too as I start to preface this story. All right? So from there, I want to dive into no. Okay? I have a very firm belief that no can be stated in a multitude of ways without it actually being no or screamed from a rooftop. No. I believe that any kind of hesitation, doubt, inaction, non-follow through, among many other things, I believe all of those things are also a way to say no. And men are taught to pursue rather than look for the immediate obvious signs. She's not calling me. I gave her my number. She's not calling me. I asked her to coffee. She never followed through. Instead of continuous pursuing, where now you're causing something deeper and more uncomfortable to happen, you're not listening to the obvious no, which is, if I'm interested in you, I'll follow through. And most of my women friends, I know this to be the case too. They'll follow through. If they said they were going to call you, they're going to call you. If they said they were going to text you, they'll text you, right? We have to be better about understanding that no can be a lot of different things. And inaction and no follow through is also no. All right? Okay, so we've touched on some of this kind of gray area, and maybe we can go into a bigger lesson later, but I really want to point this out as a preface to this, right? I also, on the no scale, I also want to say this. Nowhere in my job description ever, even when I was in high school working as a receptionist, did it ever say in my job description, period, that I would have to teach grown men how to understand no or what not interested in should I be hit on at work, right? That's never a part of my job description. So when I'm at work and I'm not following through in that manner, it's also because it's not a part of my gig. It doesn't say, teacher coach, oh, and by the way, you're going to have to teach any man who has some kind of interest in you what not interested means. Not my job. Never has been, never will be. I don't think I know a single job out there that not interested would have to be a conversation I would have to have in my realm of career and profession, right? So again, not my job, at my job, to teach a full grown man what no or not interested in means. It's up to him to get some clues. And if he's not reading those clues, that's not on me. That's a bigger picture that needs to be dealt with. Again, we're having some of that conversation now. So another important side note that I really need to dive into before I start telling more of this story. I have domestic violence and sexual assault in my history. And women who have domestic violence and sexual assault in their history have a sixth sense that they grow because they have to in order to survive. We learn how to walk on eggshells without cracking them because it's literally life or death. It could mean the difference between a broken leg or a black eye or being raped, right? We learn how to tiptoe on those eggshells in order to live. And even women who don't experience the Hollywood version of domestic violence or sexual assault, for example, women who are in relationships where they're consistently treated poorly through dismissive ways or emotional inaction, that pervasive, constant neglect in relationships can still create that metaphysical buffer that we know what kind of person you are just being in close proximity to you, because we can literally feel it. Again, we've had to grow that sixth sense, our intuition, that thing that we're told to ignore, to stomp on, to pretend doesn't exist. Women have to grow that, and we don't talk about that enough either. Women have to grow that in order to protect themselves. And so when somebody has a weird fucking vibe, we get it because we've had to live through some pretty significant traumas in order to understand what that vibe is. And we can see it 10 miles away, right? So this intuition, this deep knowing that we're forced to shove away, it has a purpose in patriarchy. It has a purpose, and the purpose is so that men can still get what they want from us, and the arms of patriarchy will come in and give him a great big old hug and comfort him because he didn't get what he wanted or the way that he wanted it, and then simultaneously punches us in the face as women until we're broken, right? And that's an aspect that again we don't talk about enough. So from the moment I met this individual, that metaphysical vibe was there. I could tell the way that he was making a beeline for me. There was that vibrational, like I could feel it buffering off of me. And the way that he stood next to me to have a conversation with me instead of, I think most people tend to, either stand in a circle or across from each other if it's a one-to-one conversation. And this person didn't do that. This person would come and stand right next to you, not touch you, but stand right next to you. So that already voices are heading outward and not coming at you, so hearing them was really hard. And then he would do this weird, like, leaning in, talking down, and kind of angling out, so that again, his voice was low enough and angled off enough that it forced me to have to lean in closer to have a conversation with him. And there was something about this interaction that just, it was so visceral for me and so immediate. Like, no. And everyone else saw it too. It's not like it was just a me thing. This happened in a big room with all my other coworkers around, including my friend who witnessed the whole thing. And as soon as he walked off, she's like, "He's flirting with you." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I know what that is. Trust me. Not interested. I can be professional and friendly." Totally not an issue. Little did I know what it was going to turn into. Right? Okay. I'm going to stop here. I feel like I've given you enough of a baseline for what's to come. And we'll get into kind of the nitty-gritty part in the next episode of my story. So yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. This is Petrify the Patriarchy, and if this resonates with you, please hit that subscribe button, follow along, find me on social media. I'm at Moving Maxim or Moving Maxim LLC, depending on the platform. You can also email me at Moving Maxim. I'm at movingmaxim@gmail.com. And yeah, next time we'll talk about comfort, I believe. And then maybe I'll tell another little bit of my story. So we'll leave it at that for now. Thank you everyone for being here. Until next time, Joe B signing off.